Hello. Lisa here. Or, well, Penelope, I suppose. I'm gonna show you Caliban and Styanax. The reason being, I think they would actually make for really good early game Warframes, probably, but unfortunately they are not really accessible until you're a fair bit ahead in the game, actually, so, a bit unfortunate. The only way you can get them early is by buying them with platinum, so you either have to buy them with real money, preferably when you get a 75% discount on platinum, or you get that like 100% bonus platinum discount, whichever. Now, I'm gonna show you the... No, I don't want to show you fashion. I'm gonna show you the... Calm down. I'm gonna show you some Styanaxing. Or some Styamaxing, haha. I'm gonna show you Styanax first, because I think this is the guy that's pretty cheap, relatively cheap on the market. He's like 100 and something, 100 and a half platinum, which is like the second price class above 70 platinum, which is the cheap starter Warframes. I'm gonna just remove all of the mods so you can get a authentic vanilla Styanax. And I don't really... I don't want to have any kind of spicy weapons, just have something very basic that doesn't interfere with my little demonstration. This thing. People get this right at the start of the game. Oh. Helios! Calm down! Speaking of, I probably don't need you around, or at least don't need you with a gun, because you'll mess up with it. You'll kill the enemies and I don't get to show things. Right. So, Styanax. Why do I think Styanax is good, and why do I recommend him to new players? The reason is as follows. I'm gonna summon some enemies. Let's not have them be quite as... Level 60. That's higher than anything you'll probably encounter in the start chart. Yep. So, what can he do? His first ability is a javelin. It deals a little bit of damage, and it sucks enemies into a little vortex. Allow me to demonstrate. Whoosh. Without any range or duration improvements, the vortex doesn't last very long, but, I mean, it does something. It does group them up, which is pretty neat, because he has several abilities that really do benefit from having grouped up enemies. His second ability is a shield bash. The shield bash heals him with every enemy hit, and it reduces enemy defenses. That means shields and armor by 50%. Now, if you have 200% ability strength, you can strip all of their defenses in only one attack, which is usually why I have at least 200 ability strength on this man. So, a second strike, and these people are exposed. No more damage reduction for these fellas. Now, his third ability is a buff that regenerates energy, as you can see in the bottom right. It applies to my allies as well, if there were any. Furthermore, it pulls aggro onto me, meaning that if there's a defense objective or something else, enemies will prefer to attack me over anything else, and every kill grants me shields, up to and including overshields. So I keep this funny ability active, and I hit them with a sticky hand, and I get more overshields. So, Styanax has a good amount of survivability by being able to shield bash for health and generating his own energy, which is something new players might struggle with. And he can regenerate shields really easily. And he generates shields and overshields sort of for his team, which means he's also okay for support, like he does something. Oh yeah, let's just bunch them up again, and then hit them with the 4. Yep. So the fourth attack, or the fourth ability, is a sort of volley attack of a ton of javelins that have a slash proc each, which is damage over time that bypasses armor. And it's pretty effective. There's an augment which makes every hit using this fourth ability grant me overguard, which is like extra layer of defense on top of shields, which does not have damage reduction, but makes me immune to status effects. So you can sort of imagine it like having 100,000 layers of very paper-thin armor. This guy's overguard. You can tell by the fact that he has like a blue thing around his health bar. And as long as he has that, there's a limit to how many crowd control status effects he can suffer, and defense reduction doesn't apply to overguard. What I can do, however, is just beat his ass and he dies. Right. So... Oops. So Styanax, without any augments, without any mods, I mean, I don't recommend you play him without mods, that'd be kind of silly, but... we go to Styanax, and we give him an aura. He has a dash, so he doesn't really need corrosive projection since he can reduce armor by himself. New players will probably have access to Dreamer's Bond, which isn't too bad, but you can probably do better. There aren't too many dash polarity auras I like to use. Like, I mean, there's corrosive projection, which decreases enemy armor, but what good does that do on a Warframe that can just remove armor by pushing the second button? So I guess we can just use Dreamer's Bond for now, since I can't really think of anything else. And then, yeah, what do I have, 125 strength? That's probably because of the Archon shards. Yeah, those are like a late game improvement thing you can put onto Warframes. Yeah, I just want to have more strength, so I can get this one from a quest, but let's do that, do worse intensify. This one's kind of difficult to get, I think, so it wouldn't make sense for a new player build. Intensify, ta-da! I mean, this one is good, but like, okay, this one only makes sense if you have the Archon shards, but new players aren't gonna have. Okay, intensify, blind right, we have over 200. Efficiency doesn't really matter since we have this ability to generate us new energy, and as long as we can cast this, we'll be fine. We'll want flow, probably, so we can have more juice. Regular flow, also fine. So we have a higher energy pool. And Styanax doesn't really have a lot of health, and his armor is okay, but not amazing. We're gonna give him field mod. Wait, new players are gonna have regular redirection. There we go. Yay! And just generally, you build him like you build him under other frames. He's versatile. He can cover your bases. He can pull aggro. He can remove defenses, making enemies easier to destroy. He can deal damage. He's got a handful of neat little abilities. So, what about Caliban? Caliban. Why do I recommend him? Helios, please. So what does this guy do? Caliban has surprisingly similar abilities to Styanax, actually. Not in a very literal sense, like they are still different, of course, but they have... You'll see. So, what can Caliban do? Let's grab regular enemies new players are more likely to encounter than Skuldra. There we go. Grenor. Right. So, Caliban's abilities. His first ability I'm gonna show off later, for reasons. The second ability stuns enemies in the air like this, and they take extra damage. So this is like a damage amplification ability and a crowd control thing, which is pretty neat. Now his first ability replenishes his health and shields, if I'm not mistaken, and it refunds 25%, or like a fourth, of his energy he spends on the ability with every enemy he hits with it. Now that means if you hit more than 4 enemies, you can actually make a positive amount of energy with this, which is why having a little bit of extra range on Caliban can be pretty good. And my energy is full. And my overshields are. Oh yeah, he also gives enemies the Tau status effect, which makes them more vulnerable to status effects, but I've yet to see that actually make much of a difference. Now, his first ability, good for survivability, and if you have enough enemies, regenerating energy. So, you might see how that's vaguely similar to what Styanax does. And his second ability, it doesn't bunch enemies up, but it makes them vulnerable to damage and prevents them from moving, so long as they're not immune or have overguard. Great. Now, his third and fourth abilities, they're interesting. His fourth ability is a kind of beam. It deals a lot of damage, and, much like Styanax's Shield Bash, removes, I think, 50% of enemy defenses by default, which means if I hit them again, they'll lose whatever remains of their defenses, though it'll probably also kill some of these Lancers. There we go. So, that's what this ability is good for. I'm gonna need to grab some more energy. Now, there isn't all that much to say about his fourth ability. It's pretty straightforward. His third ability is very interesting, though. Caliban is sort of a summoner kind of guy. He has 3 available summons. 3 melee dudes that can replicate his fourth ability. Melee summons in this game are, not ideal. They're not great. Like, you can summon them, and they do a bit of damage, but the fact that they have to roam around and try and attack the enemies is... And then they spin... They also have, I think, lesser target priority as you or any objective does. So, the enemies are not going to focus on your little dudes, and yeah, they do that. So, I don't really recommend that you use the melee pet guy. Then there's the ranged guy. That gives you 3 ranged people. Also, I'm using a fancy Caliban skin. They are not going to look quite like this if you get him, but they'll do the same thing. So the ranged kind of guys, they shoot. And with a bit of ability strength, they'll deal much more significant damage. But they are much more useful than the melee people, I think. Especially if you actually use your abilities to armor, strip, and stun enemies and prevent them from moving around. There you go. Yep. So these dudes, they can shoot their mortar kind of thing and shoot little shoot. I think their abilities also scale much better with ability strength, meaning that they'll benefit more from having a higher ability strength investment than, for example, the melee dudes. Now there's a third variety of dude you can summon, which is just one dude, but he summons his gang like a clown car, and he summons a bunch of people that look like the first guy, but they don't attack in melee and shoot really weak bullets at enemies. Now, if you're playing a very low-level mission, or a relatively low-level mission, depending on how much ability strength you have, these can still deal way enough damage to kill enemies, and if the enemies are a lot weaker than you are, or, well, relatively to these dudes, weaker than they, you can use these to clear levels without really having to do much. You just sort of watch them slowly whittle away at the enemies. You just can't expect them to be very quick about it. However, what these guys have is, there's A, more of them than there's of any other kind of guy. B, they have very high target prioritization, meaning that they'll draw enemy fire, which is useful if you want to have enemies not attack you or an objective or an ally or whatever. And each of these summonable friend dudes give you or nearby allergies, yeah, nearby allies improved shield regeneration. And I think they even give you overshields, I think. So, if you have more people at the same time, which you do with these weak dudes here, you get more shields. Well, that's a good thing. We want to have shields. So, if I switch around to my Caliban Prime, who's just got slightly higher stats and got the fancy build, as you can see here. Got 300% ability. And I summon the crew. They make relatively short work of these people. And the reason as to why that is even as good as it is, as I can show you here, the ability strength impacts their level, meaning that at max rank without any ability strength, these allies are going to be level 30, but with 200 ability strength they're going to be level 60, and with 300 ability strength they're going to be level 90. If you want to know how the stats exactly are, if you have level 90 sentience, you can look on the wiki, I guess, but the numbers are going to be pretty high. Now, it also affects their, as you can see, health and damage multipliers, and how much shield they regenerate for players and allies per second. Now I think the damage multiplier doesn't really work quite well on the melee one for some reason, at least on some of their attacks, which is another reason not to use that one. But it works consistently on the second, ranged, and the swarm kind of fella. So if you're feeling like playing a sort of summoner kind of guy, you can play Caliban if you don't like Necros and how inconsistent his summons are, because having to rely on reviving dead enemies, if you're playing like an infested mission, you only get infested minions, and that's just sort of sad. Yeah. And, yeah, I think I managed to show off what I meant, because both Styanax and Caliban can remove enemy armor and shields. They can both draw enemy aggro by either making them focus on themselves or summoning guys that pull aggro. They can regenerate energy, they can regenerate health and shields, and they have varying degrees of being support for the squad. Yeah. So I'm just gonna summon one last group of dudes, and I'm gonna summon the weak kind of guy and make them defeat this. Also, there are various buffs you can use to empower these. Later in the game, you'll be able to put abilities from one frame onto another, though only very specific abilities and only one at a time. Like Nourish. If you sacrifice a Grendel, you can learn how to Nourish. And the damage multiplier from Nourish also applies to your minions, which means that these dudes can suddenly deal way more damage. There are other damage multiplying buffs you can use to empower your gang, if you're inclined to do that. So you can play a sort of minion summoner Caliban if you really wanted to. Now, the problem with these two folks is that, like I already said, they're kind of difficult to get. Caliban requires you to play a specific kind of later game bounty, and getting the resources to make him is a real pain, and getting the parts of him is a real pain. Getting the Prime Caliban is actually easier than regular Caliban, but Caliban Prime isn't going to be available forever. It might actually be the case that if you're looking to spend platinum to get either Caliban or Styanax, that if you buy a Caliban Prime from another player using platinum using Warframe.market, you'll get a cheaper Warframe than if you were, for example, buying him from the market over here. If I look Caliban, He's 325 plat. That's a lot. I'm pretty sure that it's really unlikely that Caliban Prime is ever going to be more expensive than this. So if you're looking to buy Caliban, I recommend you just look for a Caliban Prime to buy instead, using Warframe.market, and try and buy it from another player, because Caliban is great, I like him, but don't buy him from the market. Look at how expensive he is. Now, Styanax doesn't have a Prime, unfortunately. But he is cheaper. He only costs, only in quotation marks, 175 platinum. That's not great. That's an amount that you could farm for if you keep collecting tradable things and you sell them, but I recommend him, but the way you get him is by playing special late game missions that are one of the mission types of all time, and he requires a bunch of special resources from a variety of endgame factions and whatever, and he's just a huge pain and time investment. So they're both great, but for some reason these very multi-purpose, maybe beginner-friendly Warframes, neither of them are realistically available for new players, so that's why I recommend you try and acquire them using Platinum. If that's something that you don't want to do, like because you don't want to trade or you don't want to spend money on this game, in that case, like I said, I can only really recommend you try and get Caliban Prime, since right now he's available if you watch this video in the far distant future, and society hasn't collapsed for some reason. You try and get the Caliban Prime, probably, but chances are that he's going to be vaulted, and you're not going to have an easy time. Though, like I said, even vaulted Prime Warframe sets are rarely even half as expensive as Caliban in the market over here, so yeah, I think I made my point. I hope this video was helpful in some fashion. Probably wasn't, but oh well. Oh yeah, I also have this thing. Ooh, weapon. What is this even supposed to be? New player build? What new player's gonna have these? Anyway, get different levels of damage multiplication, etc., etc. You know the drill. Bye.